that was the day he told me he wanted an open relationship. Like that's the day he told me that it was like the style of relationship he wanted. So none of this was like, it was nothing I was not aware of, but I had immediately this idea that I could change him and fix him and blah blah blah. Like, but it was like, really, if we talk about like when I knew that it wasn't going to work, it was that moment. And like, it was that moment where it was like, I have two choices here. I can either honor the fact that I know, like I knew in that moment when he sent me that text message, like my whole heart just fell.
I want to welcome you to Identity Evolution, the podcast where we explore the moments that shape who we become. I'm your host, Lorena Schuth, somatic self-concept and identity coach, and I'm here to guide you through the raw and the real and the transformative stories of reinvention. This interview with Alaska Wolfe will hit you because it's the exact story that so many women experience day in, day out. Alaska is a Heartbreak Alchemy Coach, cool title, right? Who helps women turn their heartbreak into their most powerful reinvention. In this interview, she shares how the rupture that broke her ended up leading her into the power she embodies today. Her pattern of not choosing herself led to not just a devastating breakup, but also a really scary health crisis and a collapse of her old life. But from here, she rebuilt her identity and now feels deeply self-sourced and free. This conversation will make you feel seen because God knows I've been where she was.
Absolutely.
Hi, Alaska.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm happy that you're here. And yeah, I love connecting with you anyway. And we know each other obviously through a business coaching program that we both did. And today we're going to talk about primarily your experience of basically becoming who you are today. And you actually have a great story of dismantling your entire life.
Dismantling is one word to use. I would say my entire life collapsed around me. I like that you made it sound intentional, but it was definitely not intentional at the time.
That is true. And we're going to get into that. But, on the other end or on the other side, where you are now is intentional,
Oh my God, 100%.
Yeah, and what this podcast is really about is that we experience these ruptures in our life or these experiences and they change our identity, but in what way they change our identity, that's kind of up to us, right? Because you can experience a rupture like you have, which is, you had a big heartbreak, you basically had to give up everything that you had built and start fresh, and that can destroy you or it can lift you up, and it lifted you up. So I'm a big fan of that energy, and I'm a big believer in not being able to really truly create a new reality and identity unless you actually dismantle and release what has kept you attached to a past version of yourself, a past life, past patterns, a past set of circumstances that you're wanting to move on from. So I'm excited to chat with you because from what I'm seeing in your content and, what I know about you and how you approach things, we also have a lot of overlap in our beliefs.
For sure.
You focus on heartbreak specifically, which is not my focus, but it tends to be part of the story of why patterns repeat, and relationships are our biggest mirrors. That's what I definitely believe. And I know you say, let's take heartbreak as a mirror to heal, which I love as well.
So much. Yeah, for sure. Heartbreak is just one of those things that it is one of those situations where it can literally put you onto the ground because it hurts so much. Because everything is pulled away, like who you thought you were, what you thought you were going to be doing in the future, the person you thought you were going to be with, all of the ways that you saw yourself, and all of that gets stripped away, and all of a sudden you're just sitting in this empty room and the phone's not ringing and nobody's walking through the door. And, for myself, it was in the middle of COVID that all of this happened. So that was amplified 1,000-fold. I also lived in a country where none of my family live. I didn't have so many friends. My mom had recently passed. My whole world shut down. And everything collapsed in that moment. And it was just it was that thing of well, what are you going to do now?
Exactly. Yeah, and you're a master at alchemizing heartbreak by now and supporting people with that. So that's exactly what I want to dive into with you today. Ask you about your heartbreak, your story. But before we go into the actual experience and how that shaped you, I really want to start with who you were before that
Mm.
experience, right? And with experience, I mean the falling apart of that relationship, the rupture, so to speak. Who were you? What was your life like before the cracks started forming or you became aware of them?
Yeah, for sure. So in my past life, which is the way that I sometimes describe it, I I really, to the outside world, everything looked amazing, because I was a DJ, I was an interior designer, I with my own studio, I lived in Berlin, I had this really beautiful Instagram feed, and everything looked really fun. Like my relationship looked fun, my life looked good, my apartment was beautiful, like all of the things. But like there was something about the behind the scenes that just was not congruent with what I was showing to the outside world. It was very much like the Instagram effect of life, where I was like showing the highlight reel. Everything looked amazing. And like, but no one would have known at that time in my life that my relationship was literally like such a painful space for me, because I had this man that I was so deeply in love with, but we had completely different values. Like he wanted an open relationship. I absolutely didn't want that relationship. And so our relationship that we had together, we lived together, all of the things, but like it was really chaotic. Like there was a lot happening. It was a lot of like push and pull and will they, won't they? And like, that was something that was continuous in our existence together all of the time. And like that on the nervous system level is, oh my God, I was just constantly activated. And something that I really saw in myself, and something that I've always had this quality, was like my sister always used to say when I was young, if you saw me crying, you knew something was really like shit was hitting the fan, because I never cried. Like I was the personification of like the duck or the swan swimming on the water, where everything on the outside looked amazing, but underneath the water I was like spinning and trying to make things work. And like that's how my life was at that point. Like everything looked great, but my life was really, really fucking challenging, like really challenging. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was also something that I really saw it in other parts of my life also, like I was working as a DJ and an interior designer, and these things were things that I loved, but there was also a lot of like challenge in those fields, like a lot of competition and a lot of self-worth kind of issues coming up. Are you popular enough? Are you pretty enough? Are you good enough? Like, and so all of these things were all of this like kind of feedback loop that I saw in so many aspects of my life. And so, yeah, it was a really interesting time in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So basically, you you kind of knew that things weren't working, even though you kind of suppressed it or you didn't show it to the outside world. But it wasn't like you thought everything was fine and then it wasn't. Or what was the situation there? Do you think you were lying to yourself, or was it a lack of awareness, or just a lack of integrity, maybe?
It's kind of, I think it was a little from every column, you know what I mean? Like, I think at that moment in my life, I had really been kind of lonely in my life. So when I met this man and we got together, he kind of was a representation of what I wanted more of in my life. Like he was very playful and he had a lot of friends and he was the life and soul of the party. And like something I remember saying to him actually when we were at an office party of his, I was like, "You're the boy I'd like to be."
Ah,
And that was so interesting, and not something I really understood until afterwards, until I had done a lot of self-reflection work and a lot of like work around relationships and the dynamics from your childhood and parental figures and all of these things. I didn't really realize that like a lot of the reason that I had chosen this partner was because he represented these parts of myself that I wouldn't allow myself to have. Like I was somebody that was very type A. I had a lot of dreams and goals. I had a vision for my future. I was hustling. I was grinding. I was like making my life go. I was successful at the things that I did, but it didn't really leave a lot of room for like spontaneity and play and also like this touch part. Like he was a very tactile person, not just with like his one relationship partner, me, but like he had this easy way of being with people that I really admired in him. And obviously, it was something because it was something that I had suppressed so much in myself or repressed in myself. Like it was not something that we had a lot in my family. Like we would kiss each other goodnight or whatever, but that was about the extent of it, you know? And so, like, there was a lot of aspects of my ex partner that were just like things I wanted, qualities I wanted for myself. But when he had them and it just like, it flared up inside of me how much I didn't have them by comparison, you know? And so it caused a lot of like chaos and turmoil in our relationship. But like I think I was aware on some levels that things were not working, that there was big problems, big misalignments. But I kind of had a bit of this like sunk cost fallacy happening where I was
Yes.
like, yeah, but we've already been together so long. Like I've already invested so much. Things could be different. I can work enough. I can show him that I can love him the way that he's never been loved. Like I really had a lot of
I can change him.
savior. Yeah, I had a bit of a savior complex. Like, and I, you know, you can't really save somebody that doesn't believe they need saving. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah. Or that
nobody
doesn't
told
want to
him
be
that's what he
saved.
was signing up for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's actually such a funny thing that you mentioned, like how you chose someone who represented all the things that you kind of wanted to embody, that, parts of yourself that you had inside of you, but that you didn't really know how to bring out. And so, yeah, no wonder that creates friction. And I often find that relationships are just the biggest portal for shadow work because we choose people who show us aspects of ourselves and they mirror that back to us so precisely, and it's so damn triggering sometimes.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And you choose them literally because they have that thing that you subconsciously are like desperate for. You want
yeah,
to embody it. You want to have it. And you think if I have it by proximity, like that'll be enough. But when it gets close to you, then you're like so hyper aware of the fact that you are missing it in and of yourself. And you become really like judgy, resentful, like all of these kind of very sticky emotions towards your partner because of the thing that you actually chose them for, these qualities that they possess, you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it can be, qualities. In your case, it sounds like it was qualities that you wanted to embody, like the playfulness and the lightness and the, ability to be spontaneous. And for other people, it's often that they represent something that they could receive, that whole
Totally.
fantasy projection of that person could be the person who chooses me, who loves me, who claims me, and it never happens, and it creates that spiral of shame and guilt and resentment and failure, and it
Totally. And it's like, it's
doesn't
also like
reflect.
all things as well, you know? Like it was like he had these qualities that I wanted, but he also very much represented like a dynamic that was very familiar to me. Like he, looking back, was really representative of my mom. And like we had a very similar dynamic where my mom, when I was growing up, was bipolar. And so, like, in our family relationship, it was often like all of us just existed. And then my mom needed a lot of attention, or she needed to go to the hospital, or something chaotic and crazy was happening, or she was in bed and like withdrawn. And like, so it was all these very like up and down emotions, but ultimately it just didn't really leave that much space for a kid to be a kid and you to be like somebody that needed stuff in the world or wanted things or and so like when I look back at my relationship with my ex-partner, that dynamic was also really present where he had his own struggles, but the way that dynamic went, especially around this like open closed question, was like this was always the thing we were talking about. And so ultimately it always felt like we were talking about like what he needed and wanted and fuck whatever I wanted because it didn't really matter. You know what I mean? And with like, and the thing is, we never actually had an open relationship, but we just talked about it for 3 years.
Wow. Oh, so you were together for 3 years?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So you kind of unconsciously knew that it wasn't working, but you weren't willing to change anything because of the consequences that that would have. But let's go into the experience when it actually began falling apart. So, do you remember kind of the first time you noticed it wasn't working, or it was, the cracks were forming? And that can be in your relationship, but it could also be your career or in your well-being, because that kind of all collapsed at the same time, didn't it?
Things, but actually it's like it's a little funny because like on one of our first dates before we were even a couple, before we were, it wasn't even really a date, it was just like a hangout where we were cooking lunch for his office group. That was the day he told me he wanted an open relationship. Like that's the day he told me that it was like the style of relationship he wanted. So none of this was like, it was nothing I was not aware of, but I had immediately this idea that I could change him and fix him and blah blah blah. Like um, but it was like, really, if we talk about like when I knew that it wasn't going to work, it was that moment. And like, it was that moment where it was like, I have two choices here. I can either honor the fact that I know, like I knew in that moment when he sent me that text message, like my whole heart just fell into my, like the
What
bottom of
exactly
my
did he
body.
write?
I
What?
had left the thing and then he was like, oh, something about like, what kind of relationship are you looking for or something? And like, he had said, well, I want something open. And so like ultimately when I received that text message, like my whole heart just like fell down into my body. And I knew that I didn't want that. Like my vision for the relationship that I wanted in my life was like this beautiful, epic power match. We're like having a business together. We're traveling the world. It's very like give and take. It's romantic. It's playful. It's like exciting. And none of that was gonna have an open relationship in it for me, right? And so when I really think back, it's like that was truly the moment that I knew on some level. But we got together and we were in a relationship for a number of years, and like there was lots of small moments and huge moments where things really started to crack. There was a moment when we had a foster dog, and we had gotten into some random fight over something, and he had like moved towards the foster dog with frustration. And I was like, whoa, this is not okay for me. Because for me, animals are like such a massive part of my world. And like, I am all about like creating a safe space and being a landing pad. And like, when I saw that, I was like, oh. But the thing that I really recognized after that was there was a moment when I started to recognize that my health was deteriorating inside of this relationship. And I was at the hospital or at the doctor every once in a while, like going in for tests. Just I would get like UTIs all the time. So I'd go to the doctor and I would get like antibiotics or whatever it is. And there was one time when I went into the doctor to get a UTI medication or whatever. And I was like on my way out the door and I was like, you know what? I'm also really tired a lot of the time. Like, I don't know what's happening. Something weird is going on. Like, I just thought I'd mention it. And she was like, let's do blood tests. And I was there at around 11 o'clock in the morning. At around 7 o'clock at night, that night, she called me on the phone and she was like, you have to go to the emergency right fucking now. Like, go to the emergency room. You are bleeding out. Like, your blood tests came back. Everything is wrong. Like, we don't know what's happening, but like, you are in severe danger. Go.
Were you anemic? She says you're bleeding
She
out.
like the I obviously like was missing everything in my body because she
Yes.
said like just go immediately. And so I was like sitting there in my apartment and it was 7 o'clock at night. And you know, this was how disconnected from myself I was. I was like, it's probably gonna be fine though. Like when my doctor was like, you have to go to the emergency room right now, I was like, I probably think I'll be fine. Like, I don't want to make a big deal. Who
Yeah.
will take care of my dog? What will happen? And so like I kind of sat there for an hour and she called me back and she was like, have you gone to the emergency room? We haven't heard from them that you've arrived. And I was like, no, I haven't, but I'll go. I'll go. And so I called like one of the very few people that I was kind of closer to in Berlin at that time. And I got her to come with me to the emergency room because I was like kind of freaking out. Like it's in German. It was like a whole thing. And when I arrived at the emergency room, they got me to come in and they did all of these tests and scopes and things in my arm and stuff. And like they were like, you have a bleeding ulcer. You have had a bleeding ulcer for the last number of weeks or months, and you've been slowly bleeding out and you have not been paying attention to it. Like, what the fuck? And when I looked back, that slight tiredness that I mentioned to my doctor was actually not just slight tiredness. It was like walking up 2 flights of stairs and needing to lie down for 10 minutes because I was so fucking tired. It was projectile vomiting on my walk with my dog every day just for no reason. It was playing gigs, like playing DJ sets, and being so tired at the end of 90 minutes that when my final song played, I would literally collapse and lie down behind the decks because I was just like on the floor. I couldn't cope. But like at that moment in my life, I was so disconnected from my body because it just was telling me everything I didn't want to hear. You know what I mean? My body was like, this isn't the right relationship for you. This is not the guy. You're falling apart. Like, this is not going to work out.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to pay attention. And so, like, there's that saying of like, the world will send you a whisper and then it'll send you a tsunami. And it was like pretty much that. A goddamn
The
tsunami
tsunami was
before I would
building.
pay attention.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, this is it's so interesting because you kind of started this relationship with the experience of this is not actually what I want. You had a vision of the relationship that you wanted, and instead of actually holding out for that and creating that, you clung on to this idea of this person and the potential that maybe one day this could change. And almost immediately your body goes, you're not aligned with yourself, you're not aligned with what you want, and you go, la 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 la, let me just
Literally,
ignore this. Yeah.
literally. But it's also like that's what the world has shown us to do, It's like watch social media, drink something, take some drugs, like get
Distract
validation from
yourself.
somebody, like go work a ton. Like that's what I knew, And so when I started having these like reactions to the things that I was choosing, I just stuffed it all down, I just stuffed it all down. And it's
Yeah.
funny because like I have friends that would have talked about like, oh, I put all my traumas in a box and I stuffed them down. And I would have been like, girl, that's really unhealthy. Like I thought I was a healthy person. I thought I was somebody that was very connected to myself and like self-aware, and like I was, but only up here. Like I was aware, but I wasn't paying attention to my body. And that's like a whole different realm
Yeah.
of
And
actual
that's something
self-connection.
that I'm sure like you experience in your clients as well, because I experience this in my clients all the time, that they come to me and they're so self-aware and they, know everything about their childhood trauma and their patterns, and they could even explain the exact things that you just described in a relationship, but there's just this disconnect from the body, and that when that's not there, these things can't actually resolve because you're still suppressing things. So the tsunami started, right? It started building up. Now, let's go into the actual breakup. Like, how did it actually happen?
Oh God. So our breakup was a multi-week experience with a couple of different kind
Wow.
of crisis points, I would have said. Like I it was the middle of COVID. So everything was closed down, nothing was happening. But one day my ex-partner said to me, he was like, I have to go across town for a business meeting. And I,
Okay.
you know, felt like something was up about that. It was a bit weird because I was like, oh, do you want to take Sita? Sita's my dog. He would obviously love to take Sita everywhere because you get a lot of attention with my dog. She's very cute. And he was like, no, I won't take her, or I'll take Sita, but I won't take the other one. And, I was like, okay, something's weird. Something's off about this. Like, I don't know what's happening here, but I just know that something's not quite right about this. And so when he left the house, we were living together at that time. I went to his computer. I'm not condoning this. I'm just saying that's what I did. I went to his computer and I went onto his Facebook and I looked at his messages just to see like what was the communication that was happening with whoever. And I saw a message that just said something like, can I come over and see the room now? I'm looking for somewhere to live and we broke up. And so basically he had told whoever it was he was going to see to go and rent an apartment that we had already broken up and that he needed this place to live. And he had not even spoken to me yet.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew this. You have told me this before, and still like just hearing it again, I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
this.
sometimes when I hear it again, I'm like, what the fuck? That was so messed up. Like that was, but you know what? At the time, inside of our relationship at that time, like it kind of didn't feels so out of place. And I know that sounds insane, but like, it's kind of like, I feel like challenging, toxic, push-pull, avoidant, anxious relationships, they're really like being a boiled alive lobster. You kind of don't realize how crazy things are getting until you are out of it and far away and reflecting back and telling stories to people. And then they're like, oh my God, what the hell? And you're like, yeah, that was kind of weird, you know?
It makes sense because you don't actually want to realize it. Because realizing it would mean having to actually make a change, and that's terrifying. So everything that speaks against what it is that you want to believe, you kind of push away and you pretend, it's not there because maybe it's gonna go away, right? Like it's this weird thing that we do, and then what happens is we suppress it more and more.
Yeah, I obviously like I felt it like again, like it's so interesting to me looking back that I have all these memories of these really visceral body based experiences of like reading that message again, my heart dropped into my feet. I was just like, "Oh my God, what the fuck is he doing? Like what the hell?" And like we had a lot of like almost breakups, or he would leave, and like he was a very avoidant person and I was very anxious, so we fell into this very like natural loop of like he would leave and I would chase, and like so this kind of like at the beginning felt like the same loop of that, but then I just knew there was something different about it that day. Like I just knew that this was the one that was going to stick somehow. And so that happened. He took the apartment. He had organized that. I had texted him and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I saw your messages. And he was just like, why are you looking at my stuff? Whatever. And that was like, that was our breakup really. But like what happened after that was like, obviously he lived in my house, so he had to come home, and like we had all of our stuff, and like we had everything was just so intertwined that like we literally, like, he came home and I left the apartment. I went and stayed at a couple of friends' houses over the next kind of week, and I just stayed away from the apartment and really was just like, what is happening? And then we were like back in the apartment together and kind of like deciding, and he was getting boxes and we were like deciding about what was going to happen. But it just ended up in those situations where you were having all of these conversations again. It's like, will they, won't they? Oh my God, will they, won't they? And it was just like this constant devolving, like we were having conversations that would turn into fights, and then we would get out and we would go and for a walk, and then things would be better, but then we would come back and it would devolve again, and like it was just a really challenging moment in our relationship, and like these fights, they were kind of loud and they were kind of scary, and like there was one particular like call or fight at the end of our relationship where it was like it got so loud and scary that the neighbors called the police.
Wow.
And so I was standing there in my apartment with my boyfriend that was gonna leave my apartment, and like then the police clopped on the door and they were like coming in, and we were just in the middle of this like chaos, and it was so embarrassing. Like,
Yeah,
I just look back and I was like, I was so mortified. I was like, wow, this is my fucking love story. Like, this is my love story. Like, what is fucking going on? Bless them. I'm sure they deal with a lot of domestic disputes that they really don't give a shit about anything that's happening. But they were like, okay, he needs to leave. You need to stay here for the night. He can come back in the morning, take his things, and then you can come back, and that will be the end of your relationship. And I was like, wow, this is fucking crazy. Like, this is insane.
so that really was a collapse, right? That's really fell
Like,
apart.
literally. Yeah. And like, I went to bed that night and had a very sleepless night. He came back in the morning. I left the apartment. He cleared out his stuff. But then I like was just hanging around waiting to go back to my apartment. And I remember hanging around in the park and like just hanging out. I went over to a neighbor's house for a cup of tea because I think it was like, I don't know, it was a little bit cold out anyways. So I went over to her house for a cup of tea. But I remember going back to my house at around 2 o'clock that afternoon, knowing that I was going to be walking into like, my life in shambles, basically.
Because it also wasn't just, okay, now the relationship is over. There was so much connected in your life to that relationship, right? So what else collapsed because of this?
Yeah, it was everything. I mean, we had another dog together. We had an entire apartment, like a beautiful life. Like everything felt like it collapsed, but it was kind of more in the aftermath of the collapse where everything truly collapsed because, I had the collapse of my mom dying shortly before all this. Then the COVID hit and my careers went away, like the DJing, the interior design, both of them kind of disappeared overnight. And then my relationship walked out the door. And then I was just like, I didn't know who I was anymore. Like I had also this like health problems that were going on. And I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is even left in my life? Like I was looking around and I was like, I don't have very many friends. I don't have a relationship. He felt like my connection to the outside world. Um, my careers have fallen away. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not living in the same country as my family. Like what do I even have here anymore? I had my dog and I had a really small routine of just like walking her and like that was really it. Like I didn't really have much in my life at that moment because I just felt like everything had been stripped away so definitively, there was just nothing left.
Yeah, that you must have felt like really lost and scared in that moment. Like what was going through your head when you
I think it
realized
was just
this?
like, where the fuck am I going to go from here?
Yeah.
What next? What next? And like, I would love to say that like, when that relationship ended, it was this clean break. And I was like, okay, cool. And what's next? But
Yeah,
it
yeah.
wasn't like, I kind of went into this immediate mode of, how can I get him back? Or like, how is this
Mhm.
going to get changed? Or like, how can I learn some stuff that will make this relationship go? How can I change that will make this relationship go? What can I learn about avoidant attachment that will make this relationship go, And like, so
Still, how can I fix
yeah,
it?
yeah, for sure. But I think that's the thing that a lot of people, especially people that are kind of like wired to be more anxious, they don't realize that a lot of the problem solving that we do is problem solving for the other person, like fixing problems that the other person does not want to look at, or fixating on them, because ultimately, like when you actually have to like allow that mirror to face you so fully, it is so goddamn uncomfortable that you are doing anything you can do to shift the mirror away, like, and that's what it is when you're diving into the other person's attachment style and their past traumas and their mommy issue, like all of these things. Like, it's great. You can want to help your partner like become a better person. You can want to do that for them or with them, but like you cannot do it for them. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, and
focusing on that is like what keeps you away from looking at all of the things inside you that are the reason that they were your match.
I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I promise the second half will be even better. If you have been enjoying this conversation and you want to embark on your own self concept transformation, then download my free self concept mastery blueprint to get started with your own identity evolution. The link is in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. Yeah. And the thing is also, I often find that we're actually not really even wanting to help the other person. That's what we tell ourselves. But you have these patterns. I often see this when people fall into like a people pleasing patterns. Their reasoning for that is, oh, I don't want to upset or hurt the other person. But really, it's more, I don't want to deal with the emotional aftermath of their reaction to me setting a boundary, or what you're describing also. And I feel like maybe there's something here about you did the same thing. The Kaplan drama triangle in
Yeah.
psychology. Yeah. So you know how you have like victim and persecutor and rescuer. And I often find that anxiously attached people will turn into the rescuer for that person, but it's in order to rescue the victim part of themselves. So they pretend like they're helping or fixing or rescuing the other person, but it's just, just like you say, you saw something that you wanted to embody in him, so you try to almost rescue that part of yourself more than just trying to rescue him, because it would fix in quotation marks for those for those people who aren't watching, um the relationship.
Totally.
and the vision you had for your life at the end of the day.
Totally. And it's also like, I think a lot of the giving that you can do in a relationship is a giving because you want to be given back to, especially if you're somebody that's like got people pleasing tendencies, somebody that kind of shape shifts who they are around the other person. Like a lot of the times when you are showing up for them and showing up to help them with something, showing up to do whatever it is, it's because in some way you are waiting for the moment that they turn around and be like, oh, you
Give
have
back.
given me so much. Let
Yeah.
me take something off your plate. Let me help you. Let me see you. Let's focus on you. And like the thing is, a lot of the times we've chosen people so specifically because we can help them, but they will never be the person that will turn around and say, okay, now your turn, And like, that's the dynamic that's solidified in from so early on in the relationship that like we spend so many years often like trying to create a relationship where we have done enough, given enough, become enough, like just being such a perfect partner to our partner. Perfect also, like our
Yeah.
version of perfect. We've served them enough that they'll finally turn around and give back. And like that's not the dynamic we've put in place. And so it's really just like, pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it in many degrees, because you're just kind of like, you haven't created that give and take reciprocity inside that relationship. It's not a requirement of that relationship. And so why would somebody that is receiving everything, requiring nothing to be given, ever
Yeah.
want to give to you?
Exactly. And the thing is as well, like even if they have the capacity or the potential, or they could turn around and become that, you can't make them be that, and you can't wait for them to be that, because then, you're experiencing what you experience, which is like your body gives up, the cracks start forming, and eventually everything collapses. And there's this interesting experience where in a situation like yours, and I've been in a similar situation too, right? We kind of have either the choice to take charge, to actively dismantle our lives and to choose something new, to end the relationship and to do it from a place of this is my conscious decision. Or if we don't do that, which is kind of what happened for you, it will collapse around you. And that's likely why it was so intense for you. Or what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think something that I really recognize looking back is that a lesson that I got really early on from my parents' marriage was like, you stay no matter what. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
one of the core messages that I really received as a child, just like watching my parents' relationship. Like they were very in love and they had a great relationship on many levels, but my mom was bipolar. And so that really added in a layer of real challenge in our lives. And like, there was times when my mom was super manic and she would like move half the family to Ireland while the rest of us were living in Canada. And like that was just something that was just kind of like a normal-ish kind of thing that would happen. And our lives were a little chaotic also as children. So I really had to climatize to this level of not knowing what was going to be happening in my life and this level of unsafety. And throughout it all, my dad is really solid. He's a rock. He is just like, he's such a solid guy, but he stayed no matter what. And like, this is the thing that's also got confusing for me because in many ways I admired that. I admired his steadfastness. I admired the fact that he would stay and hold her and protect her and take care of her and like never left, even though lots of things happened inside of their relationship where he could have, should have, maybe wanted to leave. Um, but like he never left. And I think I internalized that as being like what you do. But unfortunately, like I took on the role of my father as the one that would put up with whatever was being thrown at me rather than, the one that was like being a manic pixie dream girl that was just like
Yeah.
throwing herself around. So it was like that's one of those things that again that like I could understand that, but it didn't really change the way that I moved through my life because like it was not something that I understood the mechanisms that were happening in the subconscious at the time. Like I didn't
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how can you if you're not at that stage yet? Okay, let's move on a little bit from, the aftermath of it and how things shifted and integrated and healed. And what I first kind of want to know is what, I mean, your life kind of collapsed around you, right? It wasn't just a breakup. Everything in your life changed. And you obviously said, it wasn't like a conscious choice, but you did make conscious decisions afterwards. You moved to the other side of the world. You live in Thailand now. You started a new career. You started a whole new life. So there was some conscious decision here. So what were the big changes that you decided to make, and did that come, when you decided to heal, or was that more something that happened afterwards?
It was a bit of an evolution. I think all of these things are like, I really think for the first 6 months or so, as I said, I was really focused on like, how can I get this relationship back? Like, how can I make this go again? And there was a time when me and my ex started hanging out a little bit again. And like, we were hanging out and we would have dinners and it was like very cute. But I just saw really plainly, without the rose colored glasses on, like how the same patterns were happening, the same fights, the same not feeling seen, the same like flakiness or push pull. Like I just saw it. And this time it was just like so obvious to me. Like after about 6 months, it was just so obvious to me that like I could never do 100% of the healing that this relationship needed, like for that relationship or any relationship that you're in, if you're in a relationship like this, if you want to have a fighting chance of actually having a relationship that comes back together after being in a dynamic like this, you have to have two people that are 100% dedicated to doing their 50%. And I did not have that. And like, that was really obvious to me. And so like, when I saw that start to happen, when I saw that those same patterns were repeating themselves, and like, I was just like, I'm not doing this again. Like, I'm not doing
You
this
weren't
again. And,
looking
at
away.
that time in my life, I'd been spending a lot of time alone, obviously, walking my dog. I had been like listening to a lot of podcasts. I had really been like maybe broadening my horizons around like what is actually possible, like looking in the world for examples of like, what is the love that I want? Like, what is it actually? So I was listening to a lot of podcasts that were talking about love and sex and relationships and all of these things where I really found a lot of struggle in my own life. And I think there was something to hearing these stories of like people that had come from really intensely dark places, like not the same as what I came from, but dark places where it felt like, wow, if she can get out of that, like there's definitely hope that I can get out of this. And I remember just like listening to these podcasts and really having this sense that like more is possible. Like more is possible, but actually it's never going to be on the other side of waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's never going to be there, And like as much as we kind of like a lot of the time, something that I hear from clients a lot is like, at first what I was doing was like this thing of like time heals all wounds, like if I wait long enough, or if I just like spend enough time alone, if I do these things, then like things will change, the patterns will change, I'll choose better, I'll have a different experience. And like, I kind of just saw that like every other relationship that I had had a breakdown in, it didn't change afterwards, because I would just choose another version of the same person with the same woundings and patterns and identities that were coming up inside of me that wanted this person, because I was seeking for self-love, I was seeking for worth, I was seeking for validation, I was seeking like all of these things outside of myself, and I was so desperate for them that I was gripping onto these people that weren't really right for me.
Yeah. And that, like, I love how you said that, because it is that, right? I always call this like you're manifesting the same person just with a different face and a different name, because it's
Totally.
exactly the same. This doesn't just apply to relationships and people. I used to do this where I would move a lot. I would like every 6 months I would move to a new place, because I was honestly, it was crazy, because I was kind of unconsciously wanting to start a new life and be a different version of myself, and didn't realize that I would always take myself with me, and so
Oh my
nothing ever
God.
changed. And that's what we do with patterns in our life. So it's
And
yeah.
but it's also that kind of like movement. That movement
Mm,
gives you a sense that something is happening, that you are doing something, that you are choosing something. But there was, as much as COVID was a really challenging moment, like there was something about the quiet in COVID that I really didn't have any choices. Like I couldn't go on vacation, I couldn't move country, like I couldn't really do all that much. And so like podcasts and going out into nature. And at this time in my life, I also started taking a lot of self-portraits and writing a lot. Like I was writing a lot of, posts on Instagram just about heartbreak and breakups and tapping into this like creativity that was always innate to me, but that really got kind of sidelined by being in the relationship because I was so stuck on like, how are we going to fix this? How is he going to be different? Like
that.
all of these things that fell to the side, and I started pulling them back into my life. So like, podcasts and really feeding my soul with that. And then like self-portraiture, writing a lot. I also started a dog rescue in this time. So like I was giving back. I was really doing something that I was so fucking passionate about, and it really filled me up, And so like this life that I had that was not very big started to get bigger and bigger. And I remember I was walking my dog again one day. All my stories during COVID begin and end with me walking my dog. And I was walking my dog beside the river, and I remember listening to this podcast from my mentor to be, and her just talking about how so much is fucking possible. Like in your life, you can do so much, you can have so much, love can be so beautiful, but you have to actually choose it. Like you have to choose to do the healing, to look at yourself, to go into the subconscious, to return to your body. And like, something inside of me that day, it just hit on a level that, I was just ready, I guess. I don't know what it was, but I remember going home after listening to that podcast and looking up this training and seeing that it cost $12,000. And this was in the middle of COVID. I was not working. I really had never spent that amount of money on myself ever in my entire life, ever. I literally was a kind of person that didn't want to buy a €2 bottle of water on the street because I just didn't want to spend money. Like I had all these reasons why it would be better not to, And so when I saw it was $12,000, I was like, holy fuck. And then the other part of me, there was like two competing parts. There was the part that habitually would have said, it's too expensive. It's not going to be worth it. Don't worry about it. Find a cheaper one. Like, there was this voice inside my head, but then there was this other part of me that was just like, no, this is the thing you need to do. This is the one. You need to find that money. You need to actually be so fucking brave in this moment and like press send on that invoice. And I remember being on a coaching call with her, like an introduction call, basically. And just really feeling in my bones that this was the thing that was going to change my life. And I remember getting off that call and being like, I'm going to do this. I don't quite know how, but I'm going to make it work. And I signed up for that training, and it was like a healing and facilitator training all in one. So it was like a 2-year program. Wow. And it was like this really intense journey into self. And then it was a journey all about like how to lead others through the same mire that you've gone through. But it was just like absolutely fucking life-changing, because for the first time in my entire life, I had really made this very active choice that I was going to do more than just like show up to therapy and rehash the same stories that were not really the thing that we should be talking about, like I really invested myself in this huge way, and I really like gave myself the thing I wanted. And I think that was one of the first things. And it's about the coaching program, and it's about paying the money, but it's also about, I want this for me.
And it's that voice, I love how you spoke about that voice that came up in you, because, from what you said about who you were before the breakup, that voice would have been pushed down. It would have been, shoved aside. It might not have existed in your conscious awareness, but because of what you've been through, and you began actually stepping into your power and choosing yourself. That's what you did with that investment as well. And I believe like you work a lot, because I think that's what you're trained in there as well. You work a lot with sensuality and sexuality. Before we move on to like where you are now, I just want to know a little bit about how has that impacted your healing?
Oh God, so much. And it's interesting because like sexuality for me was always something that I just had this very challenged relationship with my sexuality, because I really found myself in my relationships in this performer mode. Like I was very disconnected from my body, as I told you before. And like that expanded out to my sex life. Like I couldn't really feel anything. I was very numb. And so because I felt very like disconnected from my body, but also not really safe enough in any of my relationships to share with my partner, be vulnerable, be open, say what was true for me. I went into this real performer mode where I would just be like, oh my God, I'm having such a great time, like performing my orgasm, um, just really being and becoming whoever they wanted inside of our sex life. And it was so seamless. Like the thing about it is that like you would think that to fall or to become like the kind of woman, not the kind of woman, but you know what I mean? Like to become so practiced in performing your orgasm, in having sex where you didn't feel anything and continuing to put up this charade that everything is great. Like that was never a conscious choice. That was something that just felt like the thing that you did. Like I think I did it in every relationship I ever had, you know, and it never really occurred to me to talk to my partner about that. I didn't have the confidence. I didn't feel secure enough. I thought it made me a failure. I really thought it was something that made me like not uh feminine or womanly, or like I felt it was a personal failing. And so I just spent a lot of my life like ignoring the fact that in this place where I should have had this really honest, beautiful, vulnerable, intimate experience of like pleasure and giving and taking and reciprocity, like I didn't have that. I had a blankness, a disconnection, like a faking, like performing who I thought they wanted. And that also was a really significant truth inside of my life. Like, because if you are finding inside of your sex life that there is this like disconnection from your needs and performance, like that is really a very strong mirror that's going to also exist in other places in your life. You know, I always say, like, if you see a pattern in your sex life, I'll find it for you everywhere else, like everywhere else. Because there's no way that you're this like people pleaser in the bedroom, but in the rest of your life, you're completely empowered. You
Yeah,
know, there's
yeah,
no
yeah.
way that you're a completely empowered in the bedroom and everywhere else in your life, that's, you know, something else, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's going to be amplified probably in the bedroom because it's, you know, an intimate space and there's a lot of, you
exactly.
know, charge. But yeah, it's
And
definitely everything to
it's
mirror.
so obvious that you're like for yourself, it's so obvious that you're performing because it's very like, you know, you really have to go for it if you're going to perform an orgasm for somebody, but it's so obvious in your own body that there's nothing, like you're just like nothing. And I think that's why, like, when I came out of that relationship, like something that I really started exploring was my own sexuality, like my own body, like going and doing like pleasure practices and looking for my orgasm. And like, I really recognized like in my life, I could have an orgasm, but never with a partner, you know? And so like, really taking this intentional time to slow down and go into my body and start to understand what did my body feel like when it was a yes? What did it feel like when it was a no? What does it feel like to have an authentic experience inside of sex or self-pleasure, you know? And so like, you know, a lot of people, sexuality is something that is very fraught with a lot of stuff that comes up. You know, it can be a lot of stuff in our families, in our lineage, and just like the collective of the feminine. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of wounding, there's a lot of trauma. But it's also this incredible microcosm where you can actually go down into your body, hook in directly to your nervous system, and really allow yourself to feel what it is to fulfill your needs, to want something, to have a desire, to like be in pleasure, you know? And it's like, for me, that was just like such a pivotal thing in my healing, you know, like incorporating that aspect, because there was this part of me that had been so stuck in my mind for so long that going down into my body and not needing it to be like work or hard or difficult, like where it could also be like, you know, going in and finding softness and pleasure and vulnerability, like that was really transformative for me in a way that I can't even explain. Like it's such a powerful piece, and I really like it's something that I want so many more women to experience, because I think it's such a like it's such a thing that we are conditioned to believe that our role inside of the world, but also inside of sexuality, is to be there for the man. Like we are we have almost objectified ourselves inside of our sexual world. And like when you actually become more centered in yourself and more grounded in yourself, especially inside of spaces like around sexuality, sensuality, femininity, it really becomes this portal of really becoming somebody very authentic to yourself because you're finally able to know and be who you want to be in this world, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm glad I asked it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel really inspired. I'm like, I need to get back into my pleasure practices. Okay, so before I go into, I have some questions for you to close it off. But before we do that, I just want to ask you, since we've had the before and the experience and we're now in the aftermath of this, how has this entire experience changed your identity? Like, who have you become through this, and how does your self concept or your identity differ today from who you were at the time? And obviously, you've already explored a lot of these things, but maybe there's something you haven't mentioned yet, so I just want to get
Yeah,
that,
for
please.
sure. It's interesting because I feel like I would never have really understood what identity was many
Mm-hmm.
years ago. Like I wouldn't have known like what that meant. But I think really like when I think into like my self-concept and who I see myself as now, like I don't feel like my self-concept is based in the external anymore, which is something that really like was the way it was before, you know, like in my previous life, it was all about like, how does this look? How does this partnership make me look? How does this job make me look? Am I cool? Am I hot? Am I pretty? Am I good enough? Am I successful? Like, what is the metrics outside that are judging my worth in this world? And like, I think the thing about really healing deeply, especially in one of those really transformative catalysts like heartbreak, is that you start to become self-sourced. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything that you do starts and ends inside of you. And so like whenever there's moments in my life when there's struggle and pain and challenge, like there always will be, it's this coming back inside and being like tapping into me, like who I am now. I'm like, I am powerful. I love myself. I'm compassionate to myself. I take care of myself. Like I can handle this, you know? Like there's all of these aspects inside that just feel like I'm able to tap into them in a way that I could never catch when they were in the external world, you know, like it's like an eel slipping through your hands when you're constantly trying to get things on the outside to make you feel whole or good enough or lovable or like you belong, you know? And
Yeah.
when you kind of do this real deep chrysalis of transformation that allows you to come home to yourself after these big events in your life, I think it's all about like coming back inward and coming back down really into the body. Like for me, that's been really one of the things. Like my identity now is very rooted in like my physical being because it's the one thing that never lies to me, you know? Like even throughout this story, there's been so many times where I told you about the body sensation that I was having. And like at the time, I just remember having those things and thinking nothing about them. And now I see all of that as like the information
Yeah.
that actually allows me to create the life around me that I want to have, you know? And like, as you mentioned, like after that relationship, I not only left Berlin and moved to Ireland because I wanted to be beside the ocean. I then moved all the way to Thailand where I now live, which is so beautiful and so, oh my God, so nourishing every single day. And like, I made all these changes in my life. I just like completely shifted my career. I shifted my vision. I've just like made so many different relationships and just like stepped into my sexuality in a way that I would never have even imagined. And like, it's really beautiful now, my life. And it's just, it's a life that I could never have even imagined from where I was those few years ago, because I would never have even thought any of this was possible
Yeah.
at
Wouldn't
all.
even have considered it. And it's like this is what makes it so beautiful, because this kind of brings us full circle. Like you experienced this rupture and this collapse, but this could have really destroyed you. And you created all these wonderful things, and you now have this deep connection to yourself and to your body that you previously didn't have or didn't want to feel.
Totally.
And and here you are, and you've changed so much, and you've already talked about some things that have actually manifested in your reality. And finally, I'm also curious to hear, has this experience impacted what your desires are in any way? So maybe because at the time you were like, I want this relationship to work. Like, this is what I want. And I want to be a DJ in Berlin. And now your life is so different. So what do you want from your life now?
You know what's so interesting? My desires, I feel like the thing about going through these big transformative processes is they just amplify who you are and everything you've ever wanted, you know? And so like I feel like all of the visions that I ever held for my life still kind of ring true in many ways, but they're just so much bigger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like when I think about my work, when I think about the impact I want to have, it's like, it's really big. It's like, I want to impact so many women. I want to really see so much success. I want to really feel like I'm making big change in the world. The same is true of my work with animals. Like I want to make worldwide foundations that change everything for animals, you know? And then it's like in my relationships, it's like, no, I don't want just like a partner. I want this epic power match, the man that meets me, this strong, like powerful relationship where it's like it changes other people's perceptions of what's possible. And I really feel like everything that has changed in me has just amplified who I always was. And it has allowed me to tap into the parts of myself that always really existed, but that I didn't have time for, or I was tamping down, or it wasn't the focus, And so it's interesting because a lot of my clients, when I work with them, they might come to me and they think like, I want this relationship back. But like through the work we do together, often it's really like, oh, wait, if I'm not just focusing on getting this relationship back, then I can have anything.
Yeah.
And it's like that idea of like, what would life actually look like if you started to dream bigger? Like,
Yeah.
what would your world look like? What would your activism look like? What would your sex life look like? What would your social life look like? Like, what would the world around you look like? How would it be impacted by you? And like, I think that's the beauty of like this transformation and like this change that's happened in my life, because it's not changed me into a completely unrecognizable person. It's just made me believe that I can fucking have anything that I want.
I love that. And that is also such a big part of my philosophy because I speak a lot about changing your self concept, right? And shifting your identity, evolving your identity. And I always say this isn't actually about becoming anybody else or becoming someone new. It's about accessing the parts inside of you that have been there all along, but that you've buried or that you didn't know how to embody. So you're not changing who you are really, you're just becoming more of you because you're letting go of everything that was never you to begin with. So I love that that's been your
Totally.
experience as well, and that you've created this beautiful life for yourself and that you're doing that even more, right? Like it's not over, it's just the beginning.
Yeah, for
um
sure. But it's also the thing, it's like once you start to open your eyes to like something else being possible in your world, all of a sudden you start to like be like, oh, if I can have that and I could have that, then I could make that. And it's like everything starts opening up in this way that never really you would never have seen before because
yeah.
you were not looking, you were so focused on something else. And it's like it's such a beautiful part, unexpected part often of the work
Yeah.
that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Beautiful. So to close, I always like to ask each guest three questions. And one is about the past, one is about the present, and one is about what's just beyond the horizon.
Okay, I
I
love
think
it.
you're going to like these.
Okay.
So for the past, the question is, if the you from a year ago watched your life for one day, what would surprise them the
I'm
most?
actually going to give an answer from a me that was maybe a few years ago
But yeah, that's fine.
because I feel like me a few years ago was so stuck in this blinkered way of thinking that always relied on everybody else's opinion, that I think the me from a few years ago would be really surprised that now I live my life and I think mainly about myself and my own needs and my own desires. And like, there is not this constant like checking on the outside of how I'm being perceived or what's okay and not okay. And like, there's a real centeredness and security to the version of myself I am now that I think was not present a few years ago. or it was only present in a way that was performative. And now it's really like a felt experience inside of my life. And I think that's something that I would be like amazed I had achieved.
That's a beautiful answer. For the present, if you were cast in a film as your current self, what would the genre be?
I think I'd be some sort of documentary. I think I'd be a documentary about um rescuing animals. Yeah, I think it would be like some sort of like documentary type. And actually, it's something that I think we might be doing with a little project that I have running on the island here. It's funny that now that we're talking about animals, two dogs have just come up onto my porch. But it's something that I'm going to be working on actually. Like one of my missions in life, obviously, is around animals. And so maybe that film that I'm going to be in will be a documentary piece about the work that actually happens on this island around helping animals. So hopefully that.
I like that a lot, and it aligns with your vision. So I love that one. So for the future, for your becoming, if the next version of yourself was a landscape, what scenery would you be walking into right now?
If the next version of myself was a landscape, you know, it's interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is always like the ocean. It's always flanked by the ocean, but it's like, it's this very opulent gold castle. Like this real, like, I guess it has something to do with that more queen energy where it's really like this centeredness, this beauty, this opulence, this like this embodiment of you can truly have it all, you know, where it's like this powerful, strong, beautiful structure that's like deep in nature. And like I just feel like it's all the elements of who I want to be. Like I always want to be incredibly connected to myself and my heart and my compassion and the things that I care about. But I also want to have myself be that version of self that can actually be in opulence, in complete beauty, in just like really surrounded by the world that I am creating through my work and through my outreach and all of the things that I do. And so it's like this, I think it's this beautiful dichotomy of like having beautiful material realms, but also being deeply connected to nature.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that really brings it down to this idea of you can have it all. You don't have to decide between like this or that. And
Totally.
just like you don't have to settle for like a particular type of relationship, you can actually create
Totally.
exactly what you want. So I love
Yeah.
that a lot. Amazing. So I loved having you here, and I'll
Thank
link
you
all
so
of your platforms and your program and all of the things in the show notes. But
much.
I also want you to kind of have the space to let everyone know where they can find you in case they want to contact you or they want to work with you. So stage is yours.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me. This was actually so fun. I love when we get to connect, and it's been
Yeah,
really
me
fun being
too.
on your podcast. For anybody that wants to get in contact with me, you can find me across all socials at Alaska Wolfe, Alaska Wolfe with an E underscore. You'll probably find me come up. You'll see the pink hair. It's always me. And yeah, if you want to know more about my work, I work with women who are moving through heartbreak and actually trying and willing to use it as a catalyst to really step into the next version of themselves, their next version of self, their next version of intimacy, their mission in the world, to really step forward into becoming and creating the life around them that they know that they're meant to live. And it's such incredible, powerful work. And yeah, I would love to tell you more if you want to know. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll link everything in the show notes.
Perfect.
I am really grateful that you came on today. You've got such a powerful story, and I feel very lit up and expanded and inspired too that we get to speak about it.
And yeah, thanks so much for having me on this podcast, and best of luck with it. I know it's going to be so successful for you.
Thank you. Bye.
Beautiful. Ciao, ciao.